everyone, today we're going to be talking about scholarship application prep, what you and your student should know prior to completing your college scholarship application. We're specifically focusing on the applications that colleges will have for their students to complete for scholarships specifically for that college or university. If you're new here, my name is Shannon. I post new videos every Monday focused on college, so all things scholarships, dorm life, tips and tricks you should know as a parent to support your student. I previously have worked at multiple colleges and universities across the US, private to public universities, working in different roles from supporting students through dorm life to supporting students on the scholarship side, as well as behind the scenes of creating and maintaining scholarships with scholarship donors. So I am here to provide all my knowledge that I can for y'all to help you support your student through their college journey. Now, college scholarship applications can be a little bit intimidating. There's a lot of parts for them. But there's a secret formula to prepping and preparing yourself and your student for completing the application. Today I'm going to take you through my top 5 tips that are help you prep for completing the application. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Tip number 1, planning to begin the application. So before you even open the scholarship application, the first thing I want y'all to do is to create a folder, whether that is on a hard drive or a cloud-based server, where you're going to put all information for this scholarship application. And you should do this if you're applying to other private scholarships as well. What you're really going to save in here is information about the deadline, so when the scholarship application opens, when it is due, any extra steps that need to be completed, so making yourself a checklist, as well as saving all answers that you're putting in the application. Really focusing on the answers that are for short essays or longer essays, because most colleges do not change their scholarship application every year. Your student needs to apply every year, and it's a brand new blank scholarship application for them to complete, but the questions typically don't change. So your student can keep a copy of their questions and then just update them every year versus having to start all the way at step 1 of recreating their answers to those questions. This is going to save you time. It's going to take away some of that anxiety, but just having to edit and update those answers versus starting all the way from the beginning all again. So having that saved file, I really recommend on a cloud-based server like Google Drive or the cloud, is going to make life so much easier. Tip number 2, all scholarship answers need to be drafted in a Word doc or a Google Doc. Now, like I said in tip number 1, you want to save these answers, but I want your student to draft their answers to these questions in a Word doc or in a Google Doc. Really because A, we want to make sure that they have the correct spelling, the correct grammar, and they are making sure that they adhere to the word count. Now, all those things are important because it's very obvious to see from a reviewer's standpoint if a student has taken the time to read through their answers to make sure they are answering the question fully, they're staying within the requirements of the question. So maybe the question asks them to bullet point something. You want to make sure you're following those directions and it's in that Word doc. And make sure that we're really having the correct grammar and spelling for those questions. So drafting them in there and not just drafting them straight into the application is going to make that different and to provide that opportunity for your student to review their own work and have the computer do a bit of help for them themselves by checking their grammar and spelling. To go along with that is tip number 3. All scholarship application questions need an editor. So what I mean by that is your student will draft their answers to the questions in this Word doc or Google Doc. They're going to review their answers themselves and check their own grammar, spelling, make sure they didn't put a word in there that is a word but it's not a word that makes sense in that sentence. And then they're going to have someone else read their work, whether that is a peer, so another student, that is you as their parent, a trusted other friend or loved one, or maybe even a faculty or staff member review their answers. Now, the importance of an editor outside of grammar and spelling is to really ensure that the question is being fully answered. So many times there's a question on applications that asks what activities a student has been involved in over the last couple of years. Now, it's really easy as an individual to forget about what you've done over the last few years or not expand upon certain areas. Maybe the editor is going to remember like, hey, you also did, you were a member of this club, or hey, you did this presentation and you should highlight it. Or hey, I don't know what you mean when you just say, yeah, you were the captain of the swim team. An editor is really important as they're able to ask those follow-up questions that a reviewer may have. Now remember, scholarship reviewers are only seeing what's on the application typically. They're not able to go ask your student follow-up questions, so they're not able to ask, what were your responsibilities as swim team captain? What do you mean by you volunteered at the soup kitchen? Giving those details is important for your student, and by having an editor, they can go ahead and already check and flag those areas that need extra detail. Or maybe they can say, hey, like your answer just does not make sense. Because it's better for an editor, someone who is trusted, who is a friend, who are a loved one, or someone who cares about them, to be asking those questions, to be seeing those areas that need corrections, versus a scholarship reviewer. By having an editor, this is going to show a scholarship reviewer that your student's taking the time to complete their application, that they truly care about their scholarship application and wanting to complete it so that they're able to fully answer the question. All a reviewer can see is what's on the application, and so they need all that provided detail. The more provided detail, the better. As a scholarship reviewer and as someone who has reviewed thousands of scholarship applications that get scored lower typically don't have a lot of details. Students don't expand upon their answers. They do not provide examples. They do not explain acronyms or terminology. Not everyone was involved in FFA, Future Farmers of America. I know what that is because of my high school, but some people may not know what that is. So explaining acronyms is important and catching those within the editing process. Explaining exactly what it meant to be a captain, what were the responsibilities for that. Explaining exactly what they presented on at a specific presentation, or what truly was the goal of a club. All those details are important. For us in our day-to-day lives, we just assume everyone knows what it means to be a member of the leadership club on campus. But the reviewers may not, and even if they have some idea, it's better for them to hear it from your student in their answers. So remember, spell out acronyms, provide exact details, provide responsibilities for things, provide years of involvement. So, your student was involved on the rowing club from 2022 to 2025. Provide the amount of years they were on it, the length of time, or is it something that they did during breaks? And so that every Thanksgiving, so every November, they volunteered at the soup kitchen for a day. Making sure they provide those extra details because the reviewer doesn't know your student. They don't know their life. They only know the details that are being provided to them. Now, on the flip side, an editor can also help if your student is providing too much detail that is not relevant to answering the question. Sometimes, as individuals, we go off on tangents. I do it sometimes here in my videos. We do it naturally. Our mind just wanders sometimes. So an editor can help catch those areas and tell your student when it's like, hey, this is not really relevant to answering the question. Why don't we strike that and add in something else? So tip number 4, AI can be helpful, but it is not everything. Like I said before, I've reviewed thousands of scholarship applications, and it is so apparent to us when a student has used AI improperly. And what I mean by that is students sometimes have AI create the answers for them, and they straight copy and paste the answer over. And many times it's pretty obvious because it's using language a student typically wouldn't use. If it is terms that might be used by a grad student that's not typically used by a first-year student, that can be a flag. Sometimes students miss the sure, here's the answer to, and they just copy that part over. Or sometimes it's not even fully in English if the application is meant to be in English, or sentences structure just don't make sense at all. It's very apparent, and those are applications that are going to get scored at a 0 and not be considered at all for an application. Now, your students can use AI in certain ways to help finesse their answers. As a reviewer, we want to hear from your student. We want to hear their voice, but you can also provide AI like, how do I say this? And use pieces of it to enhance their application answers, but not completely write their application answers for them. Now, overall, if your student is going to use AI at all to help them with their scholarship application essay answers, they need to make sure they're reading what they are pasting over. They should read it, they should edit it slightly, and then copy it over. You want to make sure that these answers are the voice of the student, not a computer voice, not a voice of someone who is a different educational level, different than your student. We want to hear the student's voice. So anytime your student is using AI to enhance their answers, it still needs to be their voice. They can use their resources, but they need to make sure they are staying true to themselves. The scholarship reviewers are only going to know what's on the application, and so making it sound like their true voice is really going to come through. AI can't provide the details that your student can. They can't provide what being a captain entailed. They can't provide the years. They can't provide what your student actually learned. Sometimes that is an answer, a question in an application is, what were you involved in and what did you learn? That needs to be your student's answer, your student's voice. Don't let them just copy paste over some AI answers because they're doing themselves a disservice. It's really easy as a reviewer to see those applications and flag them. And you don't want your student's application to get flagged and not be properly scored. Alrighty, our last tip number 5, practice questions. Now I'm going to read for you in a second a list of practice questions and I'll put them on the screen. Now these are questions your student can go ahead and draft answers to and then have you go through and edit them, or someone else they trust go through and edit them, because most likely these questions are going to be asked in their scholarship application. Or if they're applying to external applications, so applying to scholarships that are sponsored by different companies, these are the common questions that they're gonna be asked. So it's really nice to already have a base answer for that, and then they can just edit as needed. Now, in addition to this, besides the questions I'm gonna provide to you in just a moment, most financial aid offices are already gonna have the questions on their scholarship application website. So your student at any point in the year can go look up what those short essay questions are and practice their answers well in advance. So that way when the application's open, it's really easy for them to just edit, have someone else review it, and upload it by copying it over versus spending all that time trying to draft it in the moment. All right, so let's look at these most common questions. Some questions your students should practice answering are, what do they want to major in and why? What career do they want to have and why? Why did they choose this career? What makes them passionate about this career? What school activities have they been involved in for the last 3 to 4 years? What community activities have they been involved in the last 3 to 4 years? What leadership positions have they held in the last few years? What conferences or presentations have they done in the last few years? What jobs have they held in the last few years? And then finally, if they have not been involved in school, in the community, in working, in clubs, what have they been doing? What has prevented them from doing these things? Has it been illness, anxiety, taking care of a loved one, taking care of a sibling, needing to work? There's not things that they're interested that are provided in the community or at the school. It's important to have an answer for these questions so when they're answering within the application, they're not just writing NA. NA is unacceptable, as well as writing 1 to 2 sentences is unacceptable. Your student needs to have detailed, thought out answers. That is what the reviewers are looking for, and that's what's going to help them get scored higher on the application. Now, with these answers, your student doesn't have to just actually write them out as paragraphs when they're practicing. That will be helpful, and it'll be really nice for them when they're actually doing an application, because then they just need to edit. But they also can do what I call is a life resume. So really just writing a list, whether that is in a Word doc or Excel, all the things they've been involved in. So every single sport they've done, every single club they've done, every single job they've had, conference they've gone to, presentation they've done. Just having a master list. Just like when you have a regular resume, what you're doing for jobs, you should have a master resume that has everything you've done. And then you're going to tailor it to the job you're applying for. That also will help your student with their scholarship applications, especially if they're applying to applications that are outside of the school that are a bit more tailored towards certain experiences. If they have a full list of everything they have done, everything they've been involved in, every job they've worked, it's going to make their life so much easier completing these applications because they have that master list. Now, adding to this master list, your student could go ahead and put a few sentences in of what their responsibilities were for those positions, what they have learned from those positions. And that is important for all things, what they learned from playing sports, being a part of clubs, from certain jobs, from presentations or going to conferences. It's important for them to not just say, I played this sport or I attended this conference. It's important for them to put in what it really was. So describe the situation, describe responsibilities if there were any, and then what they learned from it. The what they learned is so important as a reviewer, because if I read on your application that you played soccer all 4 years of high school, I'm gonna think, wow, that's awesome. You're really committed to that sport. You must really like it and or be really good at it. But when you add that extra detail of, here's what I learned from it. I learned how to be a team player. I learned communication through X, Y, Z. Providing what you learned in those examples are what take an average scholarship application to a truly great scholarship application and will easily score higher with any reviewer. The more details that are relevant, the better. Relevant details matter. I don't want you to just fill scholarship application answers with fluff. Relevant detail is what makes the difference and takes that average application over the top. So those were my 5 tips for prepping for a scholarship application. Now, this is something your student can do ahead of time for the scholarship application opening to make sure they are prepared and ready to answer all information on an application. And really, this is something your student can do once and then come back to once a year and add in any new information, new things they're involved with, new things they learn. It's gonna make their application process much more simpler and less time consuming. Remember, your student needs to apply to their scholarship application for their college every single year. Every year they need to fill out that application. So by preparing themselves from the beginning, having answers to these questions, having a master list of everything they've been involved in, that they can just go add more details to, that they can just go edit, will make their life so much easier. If you all have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or any tips or tricks you would like to share for helping support your student through scholarship applications in the past. I'd love to hear them. Any questions, I'll do my best to answer them in the comment section below, but I may also use them as the inspiration for creating a new video because we need to share that information out with one another. If you'd like more information like this, please feel free to follow me here on YouTube and hit that like button. I hope you all have a wonderful day.